My brother stole our parents' house while they were in the hospital. Now he's trying to evict me from it. I'm a 32-year-old man, and right now, I'm sitting in the living room of the house I grew up in, staring at a stack of legal papers, with my brother's name on them. The same brother I once thought I'd trust with my life. Our parents have been in and out of the hospital for the last year. Dad's got advanced Parkinson's. Mom's recovering from surgery after a bad fall. They can't live here anymore. So I stayed in the house to maintain it, mow the lawn, keep the pipes from freezing, pay the utility bills. I thought I was doing the right thing. Apparently, to my brother Lucas, that was an invitation to steal it. 2 weeks ago, I got a letter from a law firm. According to them, Lucas is now the sole legal owner of the house, thanks to a transfer of property signed by our parents. He's accusing me of trespassing in my own childhood home and has given me 30 days to leave. Except there's no way my parents signed anything like that willingly. My mom forgets things sometimes, sure, but my dad, even with his illness, he would never hand over this house without telling me. The last time I visited them in the hospital, my mom whispered something strange to me as Lucas stepped out to take a call. She said, "Be careful with your brother. He's been making them sign things." I didn't understand it then, but now it makes my blood run cold, because if what I'm starting to suspect is true, Lucas didn't just lie. He forged our parents' future. The first thing I did after reading that eviction notice was drive straight to the hospital. I needed to see my parents and get answers face to face. When I got there, Mom was asleep, and Dad was sitting in his chair by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. I pulled up a chair and handed him the letter. His hands shook, not from the Parkinson's, but from anger. "Lucas did this?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yeah. Says you both signed the house over to him," I replied. Dad shook his head. "I never signed anything. Not while I was clear-headed. And your mother, she doesn't even remember being asked." That's when I noticed something else in the documents, the date of the supposed transfer. It was the same week Dad was sedated after a fall, and Mom was on heavy painkillers after her hip surgery. They were both barely lucid. I went to the nurse's station to see if they had visitor logs from that week. The nurse looked uncomfortable but eventually told me, "Your brother was here almost every day, always bringing important papers for your parents to sign. We thought it was insurance or medical consent forms." My stomach twisted. Lucas had timed it perfectly. While I was out of town for work, he'd been here, sliding documents in front of them, probably making up some story about bills or insurance, when in reality he was stripping them of everything. I drove to Lucas' apartment that night. He didn't answer the door, so I sat in my car outside until he came back from wherever he was. The moment he saw me, he smirked. "Come to congratulate me on the new place," he said, jingling his keys. I got out of the car, shoving the papers in his chest. "You forged their signatures. You took advantage of them while they were drugged up. You know it. I know it." He cut me off with that same smug look. "Prove it." Those two words hit harder than anything else, because he was right. Without evidence of his coercion, or proof my parents weren't of sound mind when they signed, I had nothing in court. Before walking inside, he leaned close and said, "You've got 28 days left in my house. Pack your things." That night, I barely slept. My head was spinning with every possible angle. I thought about telling my parents everything, but I didn't want to stress them more. I thought about going to the police, but without solid proof, it would be a civil matter, and Lucas had already hired a lawyer. Then I remembered something. Dad had a habit of keeping every single piece of mail, receipt, and document in his office at home. If Lucas really had them sign something, there might be earlier drafts or even his notes hidden there. The problem: Lucas had already changed the locks on the office when he claimed ownership. I wasn't supposed to have a key anymore, but this was my home, and I wasn't about to let him take it without a fight. The next morning, I woke up with one thought burning in my mind. If Lucas really faked or forced those signatures, the proof had to be in Dad's office. And if I could find it, I could tear his little scheme apart before he pushed me out of the only home I'd ever known. The problem was, Lucas had replaced the old brass lock on the office door with a shiny keypad one. That meant no spare key hidden in the kitchen drawer, no quick pick with a paperclip. I'd need to either guess his code or get in when he wasn't looking. That same day, Lucas stopped by the house to check on things. I played it cool, asking if he wanted coffee. He wandered around, acting like a landlord inspecting a rental, while I tried to watch every move he made. Then, as he headed to the office to grab some files, I made my move. I walked in behind him casually, pretending I was just passing through, and watched closely as he typed his code. He shielded it with his hand, but I caught the last 3 digits reflected in the glass of a picture frame: 735. He stayed in there for maybe 5 minutes before leaving with a smug smile. Once his car pulled away, I stood at that door, heart pounding. I guessed the first number might be his birthday month, 09. I tried 093735, and the light flashed green. Dad's office smelled exactly the same as it did when I was a kid. Old books, pencil shavings, faint coffee. The desk was still stacked with neat piles of papers, but there was also a cardboard banker's box shoved halfway under it. Inside, I found a folder labeled medical, legal, and that's where I saw them. Several pages in Lucas' handwriting, practicing my parents' signatures over and over. My hands shook as I flipped through the rest. There were also sticky notes with reminders like, get mom a loan, and tell dad it's just the insurance company. But the real smoking gun was an envelope marked, draft, property transfer. It was dated 3 months before the official signing, and stapled to it was an email printout from Lucas to his lawyer, saying, once they're in the hospital again, I'll get it done. He'll never see it coming. I felt this wave of adrenaline rush through me. This was it, the proof. But before I could even put it back in the folder, I heard a car pulling into the driveway. I peeked out the window. Lucas, back early. I shoved the papers under my hoodie, closed the door behind me, and tried to act casual as I walked toward the kitchen. But he walked in and immediately looked at me with narrowed eyes. What were you doing in there? He asked. Making sure the office wasn't getting dusty, I said, forcing a smile. He stared at me for a long moment, like he knew I was lying. Then he stepped closer and said, stay out of my office. That night, I scanned every single document onto a flash drive, and locked the originals in a waterproof box under my bed. I knew I couldn't just hand them to my parents. It would destroy them to know their son plotted against them like this. I had to be strategic. I called a lawyer first thing in the morning. After I explained everything and sent her the scans, she paused and said, this isn't just a property dispute. This is fraud and elder exploitation. If we play this right, we can crush him. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. But I also knew Lucas wouldn't go down quietly. And I was right, because the next day, things escalated in a way I never saw coming. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. It was my lawyer, Erica. I couldn't sleep after reading what you sent me, she said. We're going to act fast, before Lucas knows what's coming. She explained her plan. We'd file an emergency injunction to freeze any transfer or sale of the house, present the evidence of coercion, and push for a criminal investigation into elder exploitation. The key was to move before Lucas could destroy any paper trail. That meant I had to get one last piece of proof. The hospital's medical records from the week the documents were signed. If those records showed my parents were under heavy sedation, or mentally impaired at the time, Lucas' so-called agreement would be worthless in court. I called the hospital and explained I was acting on my parents' behalf. The receptionist said they'd need written consent from both mom and dad. That was easy enough. I visited them later that morning, keeping my tone light so they wouldn't worry. Dad signed immediately, but mom hesitated. Why do you need this, sweetheart? She asked. I swallowed hard, just making sure all the bills are accurate. I hated lying, but I wasn't ready to dump the full truth on her yet. With the signed forms in hand, I went straight to the records department. The nurse on duty recognized my dad's name and whispered, honestly, I remember that week. Neither of them should been signing anything. I left with a thick envelope. Inside, daily notes from the doctors confirming my parents were heavily medicated, confused, and not fully aware of their surroundings. Gold. That night, while I was making copies, Lucas banged on the front door. When I opened it, he shoved a manila envelope into my chest. You've got 21 days left, he said flatly. And if I see you snooping around my office again, I'll make sure you regret it. I laughed, actually laughed in his face, and said, you have no idea what's coming. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't reply. He just turned and walked away. The next day, Erica filed the injunction. Within hours, Lucas called me, furious. You think you're clever. You just declared war on me. And he meant it. By that evening, he'd already escalated, changing the locks on the front door, while I was out getting groceries. I came home to find my keys useless, my own house locked. I called the police, showed them the injunction, and after a tense 30-minute argument, they forced Lucas to hand me a temporary key. He stood there with that smug smirk the whole time, like he still had the upper hand. But here's the thing, Erica had another trick. She'd managed to get a court date within 2 weeks. And she told me something I'll never forget. If he's as arrogant as I think, he'll try to spin this in his favor during the hearing. That's when we'll bury him. In the meantime, I had to live under the same roof as Lucas' looming presence. He started showing up unannounced, walking through the house like it already belonged to him. Once, I caught him in Dad's office again, and when I asked what he was doing, he said, just making sure everything's in order for when you're gone. But he didn't know I had hidden cameras installed 2 days earlier, cameras that caught him rifling through drawers, shredding papers, and stuffing files into his bag. By the end of the week, I had a full video of him destroying evidence, more than enough to prove malicious intent. And yet, Lucas wasn't done. 2 days before the hearing, he played his most disgusting card yet, dragging our parents into it. The morning of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse with my lawyer, Erica, holding 2 folders, one with the medical records, and one with the hidden camera footage. Lucas was already there, leaning against the wall outside the courtroom like he owned the place. He wasn't alone. Mom was sitting in a wheelchair, looking confused, and Dad was beside her, frowning at the floor. Standing behind them was a woman I didn't recognize. Later I'd learned she was Lucas' girlfriend, and she'd come along purely for moral support, or maybe just to watch the fireworks. The moment I saw my parents there, I knew exactly what Lucas was trying to do: paint me as the greedy, manipulative sibling who was dragging them into court to get what I wanted. It was pure performance. When the hearing began, Lucas' lawyer went first. He spun this story about how my parents had, voluntarily, transferred the house to Lucas because I was irresponsible and financially unstable. He even threw in a line about me having a history of taking advantage of family trust. I almost laughed out loud. Then Lucas himself took the stand. He put on this fake concerned face and said, "I've always been the one taking care of Mom and Dad. My brother here just wants the house because he's too lazy to get his own." They knew exactly what they were signing, and I have witnesses. When Erica stood up, she didn't go straight to the evidence. She dismantled him slowly. "Mr. Green, can you confirm the date on which the deed transfer was signed?" Lucas puffed up. "March the 14th. And you're aware that on March the 14th, your father was recovering from a fall and on prescribed sedatives, while your mother was on morphine following hip surgery." He hesitated for a fraction of a second. I don't know their medical details." That's when Erica slid the hospital records across the table to the judge. According to their attending physicians, both were in a state of impaired cognition, unable to fully comprehend legal documents. Yet Mr. Green brought multiple documents for them to sign that week. This is corroborated by hospital staff. Lucas' face started to twitch, but Erica wasn't done. She reached into the second folder and hit play on a USB drive connected to the court's monitor. The video came up, clear as day, showing Lucas in Dad's office, shredding papers, rifling through drawers, and stuffing files into his bag. The timestamp was from just 3 days ago, after the injunction. The judge's eyebrows went up. "Mr. Green, do you have an explanation for this footage?" Lucas tried to fake a laugh. "I was just cleaning up the office." Erica leaned forward. "Cleaning or destroying evidence that would contradict your story?" The courtroom went dead silent. Even Mom, who had been quiet this whole time, turned her head toward Lucas and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Lucas, tell me you didn't." He didn't answer. The judge didn't make a final ruling right then, but he granted a temporary order restoring my parents' ownership of the house and barring Lucas from entering the property. That alone was a massive win. It meant I could go home without worrying about him changing the locks again. But outside the courtroom, Lucas wasn't finished. He walked right up to me in the hallway, his voice low and cold. "You think this is over? I'll find another way to get that house. You'll see." Erica stepped between us. "That was a threat, and there are cameras everywhere. Walk away." Lucas smirked, but he did as she said. Mom wouldn't even look at him. Dad told him quietly, "You're not my son anymore." And the words seemed to land like a punch. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But the truth is, Lucas wasn't the type to let go. 2 nights later, I heard something outside my bedroom window, footsteps on the gravel. It was just after 2 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of crunching gravel outside my bedroom window. At first, I thought maybe it was a stray cat. But the sound was heavier, slow, deliberate steps. My heart kicked into overdrive. I slid out of bed, staying low, and peeked through the blinds. There he was, Lucas. He was dressed in black from head to toe, hood up, carrying what looked like a crowbar in one hand and a duffel bag in the other. He wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. He was testing the side door handle, pulling at it, then moving toward the back of the house. I grabbed my phone and hit record while dialing 911 with the other hand. My voice was barely above a whisper as I told the operator, "It's my brother. He's trying to break in. He's got a weapon." As I stayed on the line, Lucas moved into the shadows near the shed. That's when I heard the sound of metal scraping. He was trying to pry open the window to Dad's office. The very office where we'd caught him shredding documents before. I knew exactly what he wanted. The locked filing cabinet in the corner. The one containing the original property deed, insurance papers, and, worst for him, the copies of Dad's will, that clearly named both of us as heirs. Not him alone. I could hear the dispatcher telling me to stay inside, but adrenaline took over. I flipped on the backyard floodlights. Lucas froze like a deer in headlights. Really, Lucas? I yelled through the glass. Breaking and entering now. You just can't stop screwing yourself, can you? His face twisted. That same smug anger I'd seen 1,000 times. That house should have been mine. You've always been the useless one. Mom and Dad just don't see it. I didn't even have time to respond before the red and blue lights lit up the street. Two police cruisers pulled in fast, blocking the driveway. Officers jumped out, shouting commands. Lucas tried to run toward the back fence, but he tripped on the edge of the flower bed and went sprawling. The crowbar clattered to the ground. Within seconds, he was on his stomach, hands cuffed behind his back. I stepped outside as the officers led him past me. He glared up at me and said, almost spitting the words, "You think you've won? This isn't over." One of the cops cut him off. "Actually, buddy, it is for tonight." They pushed him into the back of the cruiser. The aftermath was ugly. Lucas was charged with attempted burglary, trespassing, and violation of the court order. My parents finally saw him for who he really was. And even though it broke Mom's heart, she told him not to come back. Not to the hospital, not to the house, nowhere. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt hollow. This was my brother, the kid I'd grown up with. And now, he was nothing more than a stranger with my last name. I still live in the house. I take care of it, and I visit my parents every day. But every time I walk past Dad's office, I think about that night, and how close Lucas came to ruining everything our family had left. Maybe he's sitting in a cell right now, still plotting. Maybe he'll get out and try something else. Or maybe, just maybe, he finally realized that the house was never what he really wanted. Either way, I'm done looking over my shoulder, but I'll never trust him again. I don't know if that makes me free or just permanently broken.
Pour des histoires encore plus captivantes, essayez Audible gratuitement pendant 1 mois. Lien en description.